everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Miracle Conversations. I am here on this show and podcast with Dr. Dave Asomaning, who is an executive coach, and my name is Brittany New, and I'm an entrepreneur and graphic designer living in Barcelona, Spain. So this is a conversation where we talk about miracle mindsets, which is Dave's area of expertise. And Dave, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do for anyone who is new here?
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Good to be with you again this month.
Likewise.
And looking forward to our show today. So let's see. Yes, I live and work in Florida as an executive coach. So I work with CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders. And specifically, as you alluded to, Brittany, on miracle mindsets. And this whole show, my whole sort of effort everywhere is dedicated to miracle mindsets, and I'm really excited about this work because I've seen it lead to improved effectiveness, ease, and fulfillment in the professional and personal lives of the leaders I work with, as well as in my own life. And even beyond that, I think to make the declaration of the value more robust, it's really about getting out of catastrophic situations. And so the book, which we'll touch on later, is titled Nightmares to Miracles. So miracle mindsets are great if things are going along nicely. They enhance things, but man, are they good for getting out of trouble. So we'll get into that a little bit more. So let's see. We have been on the theme for this year, 2023, of miracles. Thanks to you, Brittany, for that recommendation that could be a theme for this year. Past themes have been topics like forgiveness, atonement, meditation, light, peace. Each of those are one-word themes from the past. And I also like to highlight that I'm personally looking at lesson 47 as an anchor lesson for the year. So even though we're doing a lot of different parts of the course as we do each year, this year I am also focused on lesson 47. God is the strength in which I trust. Last year it was I am sustained by the love of God. So with all of that as background, this is another favorite part of our warming up for the show where I get to celebrate, Brittany, the miracle you've been in my life and work. And it's so interesting with tech. I always, not always, but sometimes I say we've never actually met in person, but we've had an amazing journey, I think. It's been really super miraculous on so many levels. And so I like celebrating this miracle journey we've gone on. So it started with you helping me with worksheets that were in desperate need of makeovers. Those things were not pretty. And when they would come back from you, I'd be like, wow, she's done an amazing job of beautifying these worksheets. Then we went on to the video modules for my online course. I had very crude, rough recordings, and you sort of packaged those into much more attractive modules for the online course. And then I was able to repurpose those modules into the book. And then now we're doing this show, which, as you mentioned, is really just about everything miracle mindset. And so through this show, we create some really important, what I consider source material for video podcasts and audio podcasts and a blog. And you do all of that. You manage all of that. And then you also post everything. And so on the tech side, it's just a miracle to me what you do. And then I'm able to deploy the content into my 9 different social media platforms. So the whole thing is so amazing to me. So Brittany, why don't you say a little bit more about your work and whatever you'd like our audience to know about you?
Thank you. Thanks again, Dave, for that shout out. I always appreciate that and always love working with you. So thanks for this opportunity to have really something I look forward to doing every month. This doesn't feel like work. It just feels like having a very interesting conversation. So I love this part of the month. And yeah, My work is mostly in graphic design and branding and digital products. If you want to see more about my different offerings, I've got a website, which is brittanynew.com. And I also have a YouTube channel where I do video tutorials to kind of empower individuals to take control of their own media assets. So there's some great tutorials on there. Most popularly, a virtual business card tutorial. That one's got a lot of views if you want to make a virtual business card. But there's all kinds of things. So I'd be happy to connect with you, and you'll find all my contact information on my website. I'll put a link in the description of this video and the podcast. Thanks, Dave.
Excellent. You're very, very welcome, and thanks for those kind comments about this being more about good conversation than work. It feels the same way on my end too. It feels like we've curated and nurtured something into being that's it's really a lot of fun. And we've also talked about eventually maybe having other leaders on who would be open to being interviewed in such a way that they don't sort of get too personal in a way that intrudes on their privacy, but they have a way of talking in broad strokes about miracle mindset in ways that are helpful to our audience. So that's in the mix, and we'll see if that gains some traction. Also, I've never mentioned this before, but I do have a newsletter that is a roundup of sort of all the different things that are going on in my neck of the woods, and that's been evolving in some interesting ways. And increasingly, people are sending me recommendations for a movie or a book or a podcast or a number of other things to list and feature in there. And I have you in there regularly now, Brittany, in terms of just giving you a place of prominence at the beginning to say, I mean, you're so significant for the production of this content. So I think that's what made me think about the newsletter for the first time here. So again, to our audience, if you'd like, there are all kinds of places you can sign up to receive the newsletter. It's once a month. And beyond that, I really don't bombard you with emails. So you'll have all the sort of the websites and different places you can sign up for stuff in the notes, in the show notes. All right. So I think we're about to jump in to lesson 78. We'll do a quick overview of 78, see what conversation comes out of that. And then one of the features we've added is to do a quick synopsis of a chapter of the book, Nightmares to Miracles, on each call. So, we'll just jump right into that, lesson 78. And I'll be checking with you as we go along, and as we usually do, Brittany, to see if there's anything you want to react to. So here we go, lesson 78. So this lesson has as its headline, "Let miracles replace all grievances." Let miracles replace all grievances. And it's one of my favorite lessons in the course, in A Course in Miracles, which I refer to as the course, for myself and in my work with my clients. So for myself, I'm constantly using it to highlight grievances I might have about anything. So if I get bothered, disturbed, resentful, angry, hot under the collar about people, places, things, and circumstances, I have an extensive journal, and fairly quickly I'll go to my journal and I'll just make a list of all the things that really bother me about the situation. And then with clients as well, if they start wanting to vent in a particular session, then my mind pivots to this lesson, and I just encourage them to vent about whatever it is. Just let it rip. If you can come up with 20, up to 20 things that are bothering you about the person, the situation, just let them out. Again, not to be dumped on the person that we're resentful towards, but just to sort of get it out of our system. And more on all of that as we go along. So that's kind of one of the main things I really, really like about this lesson. It gives us permission to vent rather than struggle to hold on to or to push down in some way things that we're bothered about. So I'll just read sections of this, and then we'll amplify what the message is and why I think it's so valuable. So here we go. Paragraph 1 says, "Perhaps it is not yet quite clear to you that each decision that you make is one between a grievance and a miracle. Each grievance stands like a dark shield of hate before the miracle it would conceal. And as you raise it up before your eyes, you will not see the miracle beyond. Yet all the while it waits for you in light, but you behold your grievances instead." So when we were prepping just before this, the start of the show, I mentioned to you, we were comparing notes about thunderstorms in Barcelona, where you live, and Florida, South Florida, where I live. And I was saying, oh yeah, there's a similarity between us in that there are these flash thunderstorms. It'll be sunny and bright. It'll get cloudy. The heavens will vent, and it's so dark and gloomy. And then 15, 20, 30 minutes later, the sun's shining again like nothing happened. And I said, oh, I have that as an analogy for this lesson, in that we can get all worked up. And that first paragraph, I think, is talking about how those turbulent emotions, negative, resentful, unforgiving grievances, they cover up the light in us, and they cover up the sun, so to speak, the sunlight in the person, circumstance that we're upset about. So this lesson is a little bit like a warrant or permission giving to just let it storm, let it out in a sanitized way. And again, we're not going off on whoever we're upset about, but if you can do it privately in a journal somewhere, it allows the sun to come back out pretty quickly. So let me pause here, see if you have any thoughts or feelings or anything you want to comment on before we go to the next segment.
No, let's keep going here. I mean, we did an episode on this lesson probably years ago now, and so it's very familiar.
Yes.
Very familiar, especially like taking inventory of the grievances list and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
Excited to see what more you have to add here.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking about that. There are some lessons that repeat, because they're common to the different topics we have. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like repeating certain lessons. It's
this is a good one.
Yeah. And I was also thinking to myself, I was saying, I wonder what excuse I have for just repeating some of the same lessons over and over again. It's like, in a funny kind of a way. So, all right. So one of the things we've also touched on before, thanks for that, Brittany. One of the things we've touched on before is that for many of us, we accept that Jesus is the teacher of the course. This is the same Jesus who came 2,000 years ago, that the church over history has been built, the rock that, in addition to Peter, the original rock that the church has been built on. And the reason I'm raising that again here is that it's enormously validating to have Jesus, if you believe that's who it is, say to you, hey, look, it's okay to be upset, and to really get into the detail about what's upsetting to you about this person. Now, we know it's an illusion, and we know it's ultimately going down the wrong path, but I'm giving you complete and total permission to list every grievance you have about this person. And I find that the permission giving there is just so liberating, especially compared to like trying to be a good or in air quotes, a good person, a decent person who doesn't have these types of, unacceptable feelings. So really, really quite powerful to weave that component in, and to be really aware that we're allowed, And so here in paragraph 4, sentence 4 of the lesson, and you can find these at a website called ACIM, short for A Course in Miracles, acim.org. And there's a place on that website where you can put the lesson number in. So this would be lesson 78, and the lesson will pop up for you, and then you can study some more on your own. There's also on that same website an audio version that you can listen to if you just want to listen to the lesson. and you can pause it and things like that. So it says here in sort of the words of Jesus, if you accept all of that, which you don't have to, it's not required, but if you do, here we go. We will select one person you have used as target for your grievances and lay the grievances aside and look at him or her or them. I always like to add someone perhaps you fear and even hate, someone you think you love who angered you, someone you call a friend, but whom you see as difficult at times or hard to please, demanding, irritating, or untrue to the ideal he should accept as his according to the role you set for him. Then we go further, it says, and this is in paragraph 5, sentence 3, through seeing him behind the grievances that you have held against him, you will learn that what lay hidden while you saw him, in other words, the light, saw him not, is there in everyone and can be seen. He who was enemy is more than friend when he is freed to take the holy role the Spirit has assigned to him. Then just one last piece on this inventory. Our longer practice periods today will see him in this role. You will attempt to hold him in your mind, first as you now consider him. You will review his faults, the difficulties you have had with him, the pain he caused you, his neglect, and all the little and the larger hurts he gave. You will regard his body with its flaws and better points as well, and you will think of his mistakes and even of his sins. Okay, so a few things to unpack there, and then I'll check in with you, Brittany. So here it's a litany of things that are bothering us about the person. Big, small, it doesn't matter. We could just vent all of them. And then I find it curious that there's also a reference to things we don't like about the way the person looks, right? So, I mean, that's really kind of interesting that Jesus is like, yeah, add in, if there are things you are hating on, as they say in the street, about how they look, one thing or another, just let it rip, let it all hang out. And it's all part of the thunderstorm, and behind all of that is the light. So a couple of questions that are raised by this right away are that, number one, what about some of the more evil, odious, sort of despicable people in history, in air quotes, that we all think of, like a Hitler as an example? Are we being encouraged to do this for somebody like that? And is there some kind of light in them that we're trying to get to? And I would say the simple answer is yes. But that's a question for us to consider. And then why does Jesus throw in the part about the body and the way the person looks? That's another sort of related question. So let me pause here, see if anything's coming up for you.
Yeah, I wanted to bring attention to the distinction between mistakes and sins. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but in A Course in Miracles, does it have a definition of a sin?
Yes, it does. So thank you for bringing that up. It's one of the things I was thinking I would mention, and I lost track of it. So, so it says sins in air quotes,
right?
Because the Course does not actually teach that there is sin. It teaches that there is no sin. And the reason it makes such a big deal about this is because the human evolution in religious and spiritual terms of the idea of sin is, from the Course's perspective, something that's designed to make it unforgivable. A sin, and that's why it has it in air quotes as different from a mistake. A mistake is like, oh, I just made a mistake, like a typing error, and I can delete the error and edit and replace. A sin is a mark against whoever the sinner is that can never be really erased without a blood sacrifice.
Or atonement, as later explained, right?
Atonement in the normal, evolution of religious ideas is always going to be a blood sacrifice. To your point, atonement, the way the Course teaches it, is that a sin is just simply a mistake. It's an error. Nothing has to be killed to correct for that mistake, right? So atonement in the Course does not have a blood sacrifice associated with it.
Okay.
So it's even things that we think of as sins, murder,
Mm-hmm.
any of the violations of the Ten Commandments and other things. Those are all mistakes
Mm-hmm.
because atonement can fix them without anything having to die.
Right. Okay.
Atonement, the way the Course talks about it. Traditional atonement, the issue here is that we're always reminded that the sin itself was something that was so heinous and unfixable
Mm-hmm.
that something had to die. So, for instance, in the traditional teachings about Jesus, we're grateful to Jesus for having been killed as a sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
so our sins can be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
But we always have to remember that Jesus died for our sins. So
Right.
there's
Yeah.
always death in the
Mm-hmm.
equation of
Mm-hmm.
the fixing of sin if you
Mm-hmm.
accept that sin is something real.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, it might seem convoluted in a way to talk about all this, but the bottom line at the end of the day is that what the Course is saying is that there's no reason to fear God. You know, God does not require something to die for sin to be erased. It's not necessary. So, a very interesting point. Now, I don't know how that lands for you, but let me check.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I think if I read it without the context that you just gave, then I would have interpreted that as mistakes being maybe something that the person would be aware that they were not intending to do, versus a sin being more of like a conscious choice or a lifestyle that goes against someone else. That's how I would
Mhm.
have read it. So
Right.
I feel like to have all that other context given other things you read in the Course, that helps to kind of unpack that. So yeah, we've in the past, or I wasn't involved when you've done the theme of atonement in the past. I believe that was pre this show. So I
Right.
would be curious to learn more about that in the future and kind of understand how the Course sees that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I understand the difference between this kind of. It's always been it's always been kind of a hypocritical claim that God is all loving and then he killed his only son, right? So I understand how this Course is kind of a correction of that miscommunication or something.
Absolutely. And it's funny, it's humorous in a way that Jesus is
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm the same one who came before, who
Mm-hmm.
was supposedly killed for your sins. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you that that's not what the deal was. I was
Mm-hmm.
killed because people were in their egos and
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to see the light and hear the truth, but it had absolutely no merit for wiping out sins, which are
Mm-hmm.
illusions anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the most that my death showed is that you can't conquer love. You can't keep love down because I rose
Okay.
again on the third day. One of the ultimate miracles, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are things that Jesus is teaching through the Course, and it's kind of funny, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but I mean, I talk about this all the time, just to allay concerns and fears about it. And then people are like, "Oh, well, how can that be Jesus?" And we don't really know much about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And more conservative Christians of a certain type will say, well, yeah, okay, you know, this whole Course of Miracles, we grant that it was scribed to Helen Schuckman. Something came and scribed it to her, and she wrote it down, and it has this amazing internal logic. But we simply say that it's demonic. It's from the devil. That's what the
Mm-hmm.
manifestation. And this voice that's teaching you about these things, it's all a devilish voice that's deceiving
Mm-hmm.
you. And then what
Mm-hmm.
people typically say, I've workshopped this with different audiences over time. The bottom line answer is, well, how would the devil be talking about love and
Mm-hmm.
liberating and
Mm-hmm.
forgiving? And it doesn't seem like that's what the devil would want to teach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, all right. So, just a couple more things from here. Thank you for your
Mm-hmm.
inputs, Brittany. Just a few more things. So this is all the inventory, right? And then at some point, the lesson here says in paragraph 7, it says, then let us ask of him who knows the Son of God in his reality and truth, that we may look on him a different way and see our Savior shining in the light. So now we've done the storm, and it's time for the sun to come back out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives a little bit of a process on how to do the conversion to letting the grievances go so the miracle of light can reappear. And then it, it ends that whole section in paragraph 8 when it says, what you have asked for cannot be denied. In other words, this conversion to see the light in oneself and the other, that cannot be denied. And that the other person, when stripped of all the images of our grievances, is actually tantamount to our Savior, just as we are to them a Savior. Right? So amazing, just an amazing exercise under the direction of Jesus. I really like it a lot. And then just to close out the lesson, there's a couple of other quick things. So in paragraph 9, this has always stood out to me. I like it a lot. It says, God thanks you for these quiet times today in which you laid your images aside and looked upon the miracle of love. Well, God's thanking me, or anybody who's doing it. That's an attention getter. And then the world and heaven join in thanking you. So the whole world on some level is thanking us for doing this let miracles replace all grievances exercise. And then it says heaven is thanking you too. Okay. I mean, it means that this activity is really a very important activity. And then the final thing to close out with on this lesson is the idea of, as with Ho'oponopono, which we touch on a lot, to do the process incessantly, to do it a lot through the day. It's kind of, we refer to this as mind training. The alternative being mind wandering, for the mind is not engaged in some consistent, regular, incessant activity to lean in the right direction. It's going to wander into grievances and attack thoughts and things like that. All right. So anything else you want to observe or comment on, and then we'll go to the overview of the book for today.
Let's see. As I said, we've done this lesson before, and I think the last time we did this lesson, the theme for the year was on forgiveness, and it was a perfect lesson around forgiveness. So with this year's theme with miracles, what kind of thesis statement could you give to kind of tie this into the theme of miracles for this year?
Yeah. So yeah, great question. So at the very beginning of this lesson, it says that every thought is a choice between a grievance or a miracle.
Right.
It's binary. Right? So you're either training your mind to stay obsessively and incessantly on the miracle channel, or your mind is wandering into grievances,
right.
which is a stormy way of living. It's not peaceful, it's not light-filled. So, right. I think that for me personally, the quest to live a life that is miracle-minded all the time is behind the whole Synchromind project, is behind the whole thing about miracle mindset. So to have a lesson that goes deeper than just about anything I've seen anywhere at any time about stay committed to miracle mindset, and the alternative is grievances of any kind, anything that makes you feel unhappy or annoyed or irritated, that is going to block your miracle flow. So let's say, for instance,
perfect,
you want better health, or you want better relationships, or you want better finances, or you just want anything that you tolerate in your mind because of the nature of a grievance, and that you just keep trying to swat away, it's going to block your miracle flow. Back to you.
No, that's a perfect summary of how that is cultivating the miracle. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's going to stick with me.
Thanks for bringing it up. It's yeah, and the miracles. It's like, okay, you're faced with some kind of problem that feels borderline agonizing. What do I do? How am I going to? And if you do this exercise, if it's relevant, I mean, there's 365 of them, and a whole nother 1,000+ pages. But anything will work. But it's all about timing and relevance. But let's say this is relevant, and you do this exercise. I mean, I hear from my clients all the time the breakthrough. Somebody owes me money, and I'm beginning to get upset because they're not paying it, or they're not even talking about it, and I see them going here and going there and doing this and doing that. This is a composite example, and they do these are my grievances, and I want miracles instead of grievances. Within 24 hours, they're reporting a breakthrough of some kind. They
Wow.
got their money, something happened, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. And I mean, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
across the board. So it's really quite practical
Mm-hmm.
when things get jammed up. All
Wow.
right. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So thank you as well. All right. So we're going to pivot now to chapter 6 of the book. And chapter 6 is, it's entitled The Goals Grid. And I'm going to try to show my screen here so we can do a little show and tell. Um, let's see. Um, I'm laughing because on another call that I was doing, um, I I wanted to showcase in a very sort of flavorful, spicy way what venting one's grievances can look like. And
Mm-hmm.
I showed a YouTube clip
Mm-hmm.
of a comedian who's always attacking, in particular, Trump, but not to make this divisive and controversial, but
Mm-hmm.
he um, he just uses the most explicit language, and he goes on these rants, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and it's like, okay, Michael Rappaport, tell us how you really feel, and on that call, I apologized. I said, look, I want to share you what venting can look like if you do it
Mm-hmm.
privately, right? And he just goes off, and it's the funniest thing. So when I was looking for the cover to the book here, I ran across the image, and I was like, oh, Michael Rappaport, you're still in my my feed there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so that's why I was chuckling. I'm not losing my mind over here. So anyway, yeah, he's funny, but he doesn't hold back is the point. And it can, for some people, I think it can be a good illustration of how some people vent. The only
Mm-hmm.
problem is that he does it publicly, and well, as a comedian, it might make us laugh. It doesn't follow the guidelines about doing it privately,
Mm-hmm.
because it can foment more hatred, I think.
Right.
All right, so here we go. Nightmares to Miracles. Here's the book cover. There's a puzzle embedded in this that I don't give away. I just name it. And then some people are like, oh, tell me, what's the puzzle? How do I figure it out? I'm like, okay, if you're interested, just tell me whatever you think it is. It's very Zen, the statement of the problem and the solution. I don't say more than that, but I like the cover, Nightmares to Miracles. The subheading is Miracle Mindsets for CEOs, Executives, and Entrepreneurs to Transform Adversity into Success in Health, Wealth, Love, and Enlightenment. Bit of a mouthful, but um, so let's see. Do you see the goals grid now? I've switched to
Yes,
that.
I can see it.
That's okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. So I'm going to blow it up a little bit and just explain where we are with this process. So the goals grid, as we get towards the end of the book, this is chapter 6, and then we've got chapter 7. Chapter 8 is sort of like conclusions and recommendations for further practice. But as we near the end of the book, we're bringing everything we've been working on together, right? So one of the things we've been tracking from the beginning of the book, chapters 1 through 5, would be these 3 color coded um, areas of the method, right? So the practical area, then there's the blueprint area, and then there's the inner genius area. So these are 3 areas that I really try to encourage my clients to keep track of. So when somebody says, I really want to meet my soulmate, I've done everything in my life that I wanted to, I have all the money I could ever want, multiple millions of dollars, but I'm having a hard time meeting my soulmate. It could be male or female, depending. I say, okay, what are the practical things? What is it that you want in this person? Companionship, uh, chemistry, shared interests, uh, and so on. Okay. Um, in the blueprint section, so we're under column 3, the love column, and we're looking at, in the blueprint area, what are some of the red flags that we can be mindful of that you've experienced in the history of your relationships? starting with, but not limited to, your parents. What are the things you disliked about how you were parented? What are some of the things that happened to you in elementary school that were traumatizing to you? What are some of the things that happened when you were a teenager, young adult, and so on? And you're making an inventory of all those things, because a big premise of a lot of psychological methods, A Course in Miracles, Law of Attraction, is that even though these things might be mostly out of your constant awareness, you're going to attract somebody to fall in love with who is going to give you a run for your money about your pain points from the past. Right? So we do an inventory about those, and then we clean them. Right? So I am aware of and undo my negative blueprints. Or I love you, I'm stuck, please delete my negative programming, thank you for getting me stuck, which you see right on the grid there. And then the final key to miracle success is plugging into higher power somehow on a consistent basis. That's the inner GPS. So I'm aware of and use the guidance, strength, and plan of the inner genius or inner GPS in what I think, say, and do. So that's just with the love and the quest for a soulmate. Or how do I deal with my children? Or how do I deal with my work team in the wealth, business, professional area? Or how do I get to 7 figures? Or how do I get to $1 billion or multi-billion dollars? How are we profitable in the business? How do I run for election and win my election so I can influence my city for the better? And there's all kinds of different things here. I've been given 3 months to live, or I know somebody who's been given 3 months to live. How do we turn that around and get a miracle there in the health area? Right? So in each of these areas, there are 3 aspects: the practical, the blueprint, and the inner genius. And then what I'm helping clients to do is fill this out, can do it in 30 minutes at a first pass for your whole life. And then every day you're looking at this grid, or at least thinking about it. You might have an internalized version, or you might have some notes on your phone, but you're able to like use this as what I call the pre-flight pilot's checklist. It's like, okay, with regard to the different things I'm doing, for the day, am I tracking what the different components of the matrix are, and what the solutions for each of these components would be? Because, for instance, if it's a health issue, somebody's terminal that we love, if we're just relying on the doctors, that's mostly practical. It's not bad, but it's 1/3 of what I'm saying we really need.
Right.
You know, what's the deeper sort of psychological stuff within that person's life, and how can we clean or delete that negative programming for them? And then as we're doing that, how do we invoke higher power to really just transform any grievances in this situation to miracles? Right? And I mean, I've heard this. The reason I'm such a big fan of repeating this stuff and talking about it over and over again is because clients will say to me, I put it in motion, and a person who was diagnosed as terminal is now in remission.
That's
and I've just been doing this for 1 month for them. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. It's like,
incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, so, I mean, I'm so, it seems like I mean, I don't think this way about myself, but I know it can seem like I'm just beating a dead horse with these things over and over again. But the reason is because of the results in the field. It's just by sticking to this stuff and teaching it and engaging clients. Once it clicks, it's just one miracle after another across the grid. All right. So, any thoughts about any of this? Any comments? Any questions? That's about as much as I wanted to highlight for the goals grid in Chapter 6. It's just the first coming together of everything. In Chapter 7, next month, we're going to do the second coming together of everything. And I think you're also going to help us with your approach to the vision board. We had mentioned that we will be talking about some of that. Yeah, so that's Chapter 7. So anything you want to say or ask before we...
No, nothing in particular. Just way to go on connecting today's lesson to the book. That was kind of my vision for this year as I proposed, like, oh, why don't we, do kind of a hybrid where we talk about Course in Miracles and a section of your book. So today's lesson was very much related to some of the practical and blueprint things that you can do when it comes to achieving miracles in each of these areas. So you have to take inventory of your grievances and focus on the miraculous, and then that's part of it all. So yeah, this all ties together really nicely. Thanks, Dave.
You're very welcome, Brittany, and thank you for those observations. Really appreciate it. So yeah, so that's it. I mean, that's a very simplified version. Obviously, any of those quadrants or components can be gone into at great length over time. But the sheet, the goals grid, is intended to be a way. It's something a person can carry with them and just get a quick snapshot of all the key areas of life, and not leave out the blueprint, for instance, or the inner genius, because then that leads to overcompensating in the physical or the practical. And as the model of the psyche, which we did several calls back, shows, jumping into the movie and trying to rearrange the movie is the least effective way to get things done.
Yes, exactly.
People burn out that way. You want to go into the source and change the movie from there. So the source being the divine power to manifest, and also remove the impediments to the manifestation. So, all right, well, great. We have arrived at our destination for today. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for our audience, to our audience, for being with us. I'll hand it over to you for any final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. If you haven't already, Dave doesn't tell me to say this or pay me to say this, but go and get his book on Amazon, and you can get more out of the sections that when you apply this, if you want to use that goals grid that we just talked about, obviously you could take a screenshot of what you just saw here. That's free for you to use, but if you really want to go deep into the exercise, the book has obviously the whole instructions on how to deal with that and all the commentary that you'll need. We love adding this with kind of a more conversational feel to it, and we do hope to someday like aggregate all of these different videos with different commentary on the book chapters and offer that with the book or Jason or something like that. So just if you want to take advantage of all the information, then go ahead and get the book. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in, and if you feel like it, then a practical homework assignment could be to fill out that goals grid using this video. We always like to leave you as something you can do and take away. But as Dave said, thanks for watching, and we will see you in next month's episode. Looking forward to that.
Excellent, Brittany. Thank you for your amazing calls to action at the end of each of these. Really appreciate it. And thank you. I'll see you next month. And thanks to our audience, too.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.